as you're thinking about the end of the year, and that topic is how to build your sales team. And so there's a couple of different models that I want to go through with you. The primary one that I want to spend the most amount of time on, that I think will be most valuable to you, to give you a complete framework for your sales and your sales team, filling out your sales team, is a 4-step, sort of 4 pillars to building out a repeatable hiring and onboarding sales process. So we're going to go through these 4 pillars with 3 steps within each of those 4 pillars. So we'll take some time doing that, and then if we have time permitting, then after that what we'll do is go through a second model that might be useful for you as you're getting a lot more specific in your hiring. So let's do that. Ready to get started? Awesome, let's do it. So let me just move this out of the way. So if you're watching along, either live or you're watching the recording, what I'd like you to do, if you got a notebook, or if you're in a conference room, maybe using a whiteboard, one of the things I want you to do is just draw along with me, because I think this would be really useful to help you internalize, and then you'll have a sketch that you can use, post to your wall, and refer back to. So the easiest thing to do is just draw a big circle, and then bifurcate that, so it kind of looks like you're looking down the scope, looking down the scope of a gun, I guess you could say. So that's the basic framework, the basic model that we'll be using. And so what I mentioned is that there are 4 primary parts to building out your sales team. So we're going to start over here in quadrant 1 and kind of work around to quadrant number 4. So the first thing we want to do is define. The second is find. The third is hire. And the fourth is onboard. So these are our 4 primary key areas, or key stages to having a complete sales hiring system. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these 4 in a bit more detail, and then if you have any questions as you're watching this, either live or recorded, just post those in the comment box, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So in this first quadrant of define, there's 3 parts. And so the first thing we want to do is identify the tasks. We want to identify the tasks. And so the reason this is really, really important is that a lot of times when I work with startup CEOs or early stage teams, and they're hiring their first salesperson or their first salespeople, one of the things I hear from this is like, I gotta find a salesperson, I gotta find a sales team, I gotta hire a salesperson. And so then my response to that is, okay, that's great. What job do you need them to do? Like, what specifically are you hiring them to do? And there's this tendency to feel overwhelmed or overloaded and say, well, gosh, I don't know, like I'm doing the sales work and I'm getting some customers, but I've got too many leads to manage, or I've got pipeline that's kind of piling up and I need somebody to help me close deals, or I'm onboarded some customers and I need somebody to make sure that those customers are onboarded and successful. So I just need a salesperson that can help me like offload a lot of this work. And so if we dive into this and think about it more specifically, what you really need may not be a salesperson that does end to end, from prospecting all the way through to account, executive type of work where you're developing and closing deals all the way through to customer success. What you may in fact need is just a sales development person to work on the lead development and prospecting and qualifying. Or what you might need is just a customer success person on the back end, so that after you bring a new customer on board, you can confidently hand that over to an account manager or a customer success manager who's going to make sure that that customer is happy and using the product. Or maybe you do need somebody in the middle of the sales process to help you with executing on your development of sales opportunities, somebody to help you run your product demos if you're doing a lot of big presentations, somebody to help you follow up and talk to the different buyers that are involved. And so the very first thing we want to do is define the tasks specifically, because that's going to help us go from tasks that we need done to a definition of the job that we're hiring for. And so that's the difference here. That's why the first step here is defining. We need to define the task so that we know what job it is that we're hiring for. And once we're clear on the tasks and we're clear on the job, that allows us to write the job description. It allows us to go out and talk to people, whether it's in our network or share that job posting or even post on different job boards in order to go and find the people that we need. So the first thing we want to do is define the task and then define the job, okay? The second thing we need to do is define the metrics. And so by metrics, what I'm referring to specifically is, how is this job measured? How do we measure the success and the execution of this job? And so if it's a sales development rep, then we need to know and define the metrics that are going to drive the behavior and drive the outcomes that we need for that person to successfully complete that job. So if it's a sales development person, we need to know, are the metrics somebody that can do 100 calls every day? Is it somebody that can run an email campaign because you've got inbound leads that are going onto a marketing list? Are the metrics based on how many early qualification calls that you have? What are the key metrics what are the behaviors that are going to drive the outcomes that you need in order for this person to be successful? Because this is going to be a huge part of how you find the right person. Because, for example, let's say we have one of our clients who does a lot of outbound calling. In his market, it makes sense, and he actually has a really high conversion rate. It's something like 5 or 10%, maybe as high as 15%, depending on the day and depending on the quality of that list that day. 15% connection, like people that actually pick up the phone. So for every 100 calls, and he can knock out 100 calls in a day, he's talking to 10 or 15 people. And of those 10 or 15 people, it leads to a second call, which is qualification, and sometimes a short product demo, and then either closing right there on that second call or setting up a third call. So knowing that process and knowing that in his case, the metric is, I need somebody that can do 100 calls in a day, and then with those 15 or 10 connections that happen when the other side picks up the phone, I need to make sure that they can convert, say, of those 10, another 3 into the next meeting, right? If you don't have those metrics, how are you going to know if that person is qualified to do that work? Because you might hire somebody who is, a sales development rep, but what if most of the work they did was prospecting with warm leads? Or what if most of the prospecting they were doing was via email? Well, if you don't have the jobs and the tasks defined, and you don't know what the metrics are going to be to define whether or not that person is successful, then it's going to be really, really hard for you to know whether or not the person that you're interviewing eventually is right for the job. You might end up hiring somebody that's just the wrong fit because the work that they did doesn't match up with the metrics that you need them to execute on, okay? So, by the way, do a quick pause. I know a couple people just joined. So I would love it if you just joined. I want to say a quick hello. And just let me know that the audio is working with you, or if you want to share this post or like this post, just so that I know that you guys can hear me okay. That would be a big help. Okay, so we've got tasks. We're defining the tasks, which allow us to find the jobs that we're hiring for. The second is then we define the metrics. And the third thing we need to do is define the persona. The persona, or the cultural, hey Kevin, good to see you. The cultural side, we need to define what is the kind of person that we want to bring into our company. So different companies have different cultures. Some companies are very active, sort of sports, you'll even see this, like sports-minded culture, people that are highly competitive and talk about sports all the time. I remember a friend of mine still actually he's a general manager at a company called Tech Target. And it's a big publicly traded company now. And I remember I was part of a softball team that was a big part of that team was most of the sales team. And that sales team were a lot of people, mostly men, from the East Coast and highly, highly competitive, very sports-minded, right? So when they were recruiting and hiring, in order to kind of fit into that culture, they were looking for like-minded people, whether it be female or male, right? On the other hand, some company cultures are very intellectual, right? And so you want to make sure that you're really clear in defining the persona or the personality of the people that you're recruiting, because if it's not a good fit culturally, even if the person can execute on the tasks and hit those metrics, they're just not going to feel comfortable, and you're not going to feel comfortable. Now, as a leader of a company, you also want to think about some levels of diversity. So there's a lot of downside to having a very fixed culture and only hiring that, because then you get sort of the same mindset over and over and over. So as a leader of the company, if you're building out your sales team, maybe it's an opportunity to inject other types of people, more intellectual focused people, as opposed to sports-minded people. And just being very bifurcated in that. It's not to say that sports-minded people can't be intellectual and vice versa. It's just there's these sort of tendencies that people have, right? So these are the first 3 steps. Is before we do any recruiting, before we do any interviewing, what we have to do is define the tasks, so we know what jobs it is that we're hiring for. We need to know the metrics so that as we're eventually bringing in candidates, we can find those candidates that have hit those metrics successfully in the past. And thirdly, we just need to be really, really clear about the types of people that we want to bring into our company, people that are going to be a good fit, or people that will help to constantly increase and improve the culture of our company. So those are the first 3 steps around define. Okay, so once we've got those done, then we move into part 2. So we just think about this as moving around counterclockwise, right? So the 3 parts here that we want to think about, so is now finding. And this is obviously going to go figure out where you can go find the people that match the definition of the job and the person that you want to find. And so I think about finding in terms of there's kind of 3 places to find, right? There's the people, so meeting your network. There are the places that you can go. And then the third, and this is more of an action or more of a mindset for you as you're going out recruiting and hiring people, is priority. So let me define each of those. So the first best place to go is use your network, right? So if you're hiring somebody that you want to bring into your company, if you have peers of other CEOs or you have people in your network that you know have access to the kinds of people that you want to recruit and hire, well then let's sit down and figure out who are those people. Just like you would in a sales situation, you can treat recruiting and hiring just like you would sales, right? You want to find prospects, you want to bring them through a pipeline, and then you want to, in our sense, close them, right? You want to hire the right people. And so the very first place you can go is figure out from your network, who are the people that can help you get the word out so that you might be second degree connections with good candidates, right? So I remember one of the people that's really, really good at this is a guy named John Bishke. So John is the CEO and co-founder over at Intello, and especially early stage, because you want that culture to be really, really tight. Like the numbers are generally around the first 50. The first 50 people, you want to make sure that it's one cohesive unit. I mean, of course you want the whole team and the whole company over time, even if it's 500 or 5,000 or 50,000, to be a cohesive unit. But at 50, it's really, really critical to make sure that everybody fits and that everybody's feeling like they're part of one big team, right? Because eventually when you get bigger, you start to get bifurcations and trifurcations and sort of subgroups and sub-cohorts within the bigger company. And so by starting with your network, you're going to be most likely to find the people that are going to be most like you that fit into the culture, right? Into the persona that you want. So when you're finding people, you always want to start with the people in your network that can help you find. The second place you want to do is think about the places that you can go, both virtual and physical. So if you're out there recruiting and you're out there now finding the candidates that you need, you want to think about where are the places I can go. And so I always encourage people, if you're building a team, and we'll get to this from a priority standpoint in a moment, even if you think you need to be building a team in the next 3 to 6 months, then once a week or at least twice a month, get out to a physical location, get out to a meetup, for example, where salespeople are spending time, or get out to a conference or an event that has a lot of the people that you want to hire, whether it's salespeople or product people or engineering. Like, go out and meet people and talk to people, right? Because that's going to allow you to, hey Ben, good to see you, man. And so what you want to be able to do is make sure you're getting out and talking to people, because what that's going to do is 2 things. Oftentimes the people that are out looking for jobs are also out in these physical locations, right? They're out there networking. And secondly, it allows you to build your network of other people that you could then say, hey, I'm hiring 3 SDRs over the next month. Do you know of anybody who might be interested, or do you know anybody who can get me access to candidates? So just getting out there physically, even if it's once a week or twice a month, that's going to be a big boost to your ability to go out there and recruit, right? The second thing you want to think about places is virtual places. So it could be Facebook groups, it could be LinkedIn groups, and it could be, of course, job boards where you know have the best success. And so there's a lot of very specific job boards out there. There's one specifically that we know of is called Always Hired, for example, is a place where salespeople are posting their resumes, and then as an employer you can go and pay for access to those. You can also go to places like ZipRecruiter, which would allow you to post a job and then send out that job posting to, I think it's 50 or 100 different job posting websites. So making sure that your plate, like once you have the description and the jobs really well defined, then you know the places to go physically and the places to go virtually to go find the people that you want to recruit and get into your pipeline. The third thing on finding is priority. And the reason priority is important is, thanks Ben, appreciate the kudos. The reason I say the word priority is because just a couple minutes ago, I talked about the importance of thinking of your recruiting pipeline like a sales pipeline. And so if you're out there selling, right, do you want to wait until you need a customer, until you're out of revenue, or you have no new customers coming in, and then start your prospecting? Because if you're selling to the enterprise, oftentimes you're looking at a 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, I've been in 18-month sales cycles, right? And so the reason I mentioned the word priority as part of your finding is that even if you're not hiring today in December or even in January, if you're growing, you know you're going to need the help. You know that there's certain tasks that you're doing personally that eventually you want to get off your plate, whether that's outsourcing it or hiring somebody to bring into your company. Now, whether that time when that's going to happen is in March or next June or even a year from now, you want to make finding people a priority. So just like when you're going out for customers and just like when you're raising capital, you don't want to wait till the last minute to then say, oh man, I really got to hire somebody today or this week or this month, because then you're going to be sort of stuck with only those candidates that are available and in the market this month. And additionally, for example, right now, end of year, if you're out recruiting and hiring salespeople right now in December are thinking about, people that are thinking about changing are going to be doing that in the next couple of months, right? Because they will have finished out their year at their previous sales job, get their end of year bonuses, and then think about, okay, how can I improve my lot, or how can I improve the work that I'm doing? And so you want to think about hiring and this finding process as an ongoing process, just like you do capital raising, just like you do with sales in terms of your new customers, right? So just make it a priority. And so even if it's not a top priority for you right now, and you're not planning to hire until March or June, then make sure you go to one event every single month. Block out an hour of your time. Maybe it's every Friday afternoon from 2 to 3. You're going to hop on a couple of virtual groups, whether it's on LinkedIn or it's on Facebook, and leave some comments or reach out to a couple people. Go on LinkedIn and do a search and look for people who might be good candidates, and just reach out and say, hey, saw that you've done some really great sales work at XYZ company. My name is, I see Kevin is here, so hey, my name is Kevin. My company is Blueboard. This is what I do. Just thought I'd reach out to say hello and create a connection. And if you ever want to chat, then just let me know, and be happy to set up a time to have a conversation, right? So just doing a little bit of that work ahead of time will allow you to build a flow. Just like you want a lead flow in your sales pipeline, and you want to have a lot of VCs hopefully vying for the next round of capital, you want to start building up that network. And I mentioned John Bishke earlier. He was excellent at this as well. He's always recruiting, always recruiting, always recruiting, always made it a priority, right? So that's defined, and that's fine, okay? So let's bring it over to the other side of the wheel here. So we've got 3 parts on the hiring. So now this is where things start to get serious, right? So you know your job, you found some candidates, and you need to start doing the interviewing process. You need to start hiring people. And so there's 3 parts of a sound hiring process. So the first is to assess, have a system to assess the talent. Can the people perform the jobs and tasks? Can they hit the metrics? So you need to have a system in place to assess that, to know whether or not, because salespeople, frankly, I've hired a lot of salespeople, and I've never met a salesperson on their LinkedIn profile and their resume that wasn't a top performer. I've never met somebody that didn't exceed quota for the last 3 years. I've never met a salesperson on their resume that said, wow, I was consistently under quota, I don't like to make phone calls, and I actually don't want to do selling at all. What I really want to do is product development. Like, I've never had that situation. I'm sure you won't either. And so every resume, every interview, every salesperson is going to look the part, and they're going to interview really well. So it's our job to make some objective decisions, and the way we do that is having a way to assess, right? The second part here is the interview process, and then the third is to be able to screen. So assess, interview, and screen. So these all kind of work hand in hand because you're constantly doing these three things, right? You're assessing new candidates as they come in on the resumes. You want to have a way to screen them, and then you want to have a sound interview process. And so one of the things that I've done, and I encourage our teams, the teams that I work with, to do, is especially on the screening process, one of the things we'll do is as part of the application process, so if I post a job, then in that job posting, I'm going to ask them to answer a couple of really specific questions. And some of those questions, for example, that I've used in the past is, for example, describe for me what is your single biggest personal accomplishment over the last 12 months and why that was important, right? Another one that I've used, it's just kind of funny and it helps to get to the persona, is I'll ask somebody, if you were a Star Wars character, which character would you be and why? So that's a way to insert a way to sort of disqualify people, because some people look at that and go, wow, that's a really goofy question. Well, good. If they think it's a goofy question, they're not a good fit for my company, because I think Star Wars is pretty cool. I love the whole theme of all of the movies and the idea of the hero's journey that is the underpinning of that entire series. So when people see that and they don't want to respond, that's totally cool. I don't want those people coming and working at my company. The same thing with the question about what's your single biggest accomplishment over the last 12 months and why is that? Because you'll get some really interesting things. You'll get some things that people say, hey, I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, wow, okay, that's cool. That's somebody that could fit into our culture because I'm the kind of person that does a lot of outdoor stuff. But you'll also hear things like, I've had this once where somebody said, I started winning my battle with cancer. And I've had somebody write that in a letter to me to tell me that over the last 12 months, their cancer went into remission and now their life is back in order and now they're out looking for a job. You're like, wow, I never would have obviously known that had they been willing to share it. And so these kinds of questions allow you to screen candidates earlier, because sometimes people will not want to answer those questions. If people just send a resume, see attached, but they didn't really read the posting, they didn't really answer the questions, put any thought into it, well, you really quickly go from 100 resumes or 500 resumes down to 20. And then from those 20, you can read their responses and go, wow, of those 20, these 10 people can't write at all. They didn't answer the question, they don't know how to write, and I can just exit them. So now of the 200 resumes, I really only have to focus on these 10. And then from there, I can start the assessment process with a short interview. And then from there, what we always recommend, and we actually have a license to a screening behavioral assessment. So whether a behavioral assessment, meaning something like DISC, D-I-S-C, is one behavioral assessment. We use one called Zero Risk. And so we encourage all of our clients, because we have a license that they can use, to give a behavioral assessment to all of their candidates. So after somebody's gone through the interview screening and they've kind of passed that test and you've done a quick phone screen, like 10 or 15 minutes, just to see if it's a good fit, then you want to bring them in for a face-to-face. Well, one of the things we'll do is say in between that quick phone screen and the face-to-face, send them this behavioral assessment so that you can identify some of their tendencies. It's not a personality test. It's not a reason to disqualify somebody and not hire somebody. It's just a way to identify some tendencies so that you know what you have to work with. Again, it's a way to make the assessment more objective as opposed to all the great things that your candidates are going to tell you, right? And then in the interview process, of course, making sure that you've got a talent acquisition strategy and you've got an interview questioning strategy that allows you to kind of balance the objective nature of the behavioral assessment, balance the qualitative side of their answers and who they are in their persona, along with can they actually hit the metrics that you want. So these are kind of the three parts of the hiring process: screening, assessing, and interviewing. So now you've got this person hired, right? And so we've got three last steps for onboarding, right? So the three that are here, we've got team, training, and manage. So the three stages here, oh, I had it there and I just missed it. So that's okay. Team, training, and manage. So first thing is that you want to make the onboarding process, help them feel like they are part of the team by getting your team involved with the onboarding process. So even if you're a virtual team, or even if you're a small team, it's you and a CTO and 2 or 3 other product people, there's absolutely no excuse for not getting those people involved with the onboarding process. That might mean having the CTO spend half a day with your new salesperson or your new sales team that you're bringing in at the same time. Because that CTO is going to be able to answer a lot of technical questions and give a perspective and an overview of the platform. A lot of technical questions that your customers are going to be asking, and don't expect that new person to understand everything about your platform and everything technology related. But you can certainly insert your CTO, and maybe over the course of a 4-week or 8-week period, having an hour of one-on-ones built in as part of your onboarding process with the CTO and the new salesperson, so that the salesperson has direct access in a closed environment, not just on Slack to ask questions that customers are asking and getting partial answers or half answers that they don't understand, that they're just copying and pasting into emails. Like really understanding the product, really understanding the core platform. So you can do that with your technical team, your engineering team. You can do that with your product team. If you're a bit bigger and you've got a finance and HR team, make sure obviously they're going to be involved with the onboarding process. So getting the team involved is really, really critical, so that person feels like they are part of the company, not just the salesperson that's on the desk doing all of the calling, doesn't really understand everything else that's going on. The second is then making sure you've got a really clear training program mapped out. There's nothing more nerve-wracking for a new employee than having walked into a new company and saying, hey, here's your laptop, here's the leads that we're working with, go get them, let me know if you have any questions. But you should have a training program mapped out for you, okay? I'm gonna do one quick pause because I want to make sure that the audio is still working. Sorry guys. Here we go. We're still live. Cool. Thanks for your patience on that. So you want to have a training program built out, especially the first week should be highly regimented, which includes time with the rest of the team, it includes time with you, it includes training that you're going to be doing on how you run calls or how you prospect or how you do product demos. The last thing you want to do is go hire somebody for their capabilities and then just assume that they're going to be able to take those capabilities and then allocate that directly to your company and your product, right? If you want that person to be part of your culture, if you want that person to be successful, you have to be able to be willing not just to invest time in finding and hiring, but you need to make sure you're investing time in the onboarding process, okay? Do one quick thing here. Okay. And then finally, the last piece is managing. So this is over a longer term basis. Like, how are you going to manage that person to the jobs and the metrics that they're doing, and making sure that that person is happy with your company? And so that includes things like doing daily stand-ups. Those sometimes can be in person or they can be virtual. We do daily stand-ups, we do those on Slack. So we have one of our Slack channels is daily stand-up. And every morning I go in, I type in, these are the 3 things I'm working on. I find out from the rest of the people that work with me, what are the things that you're working on? So that way we all understand each other's priorities. So just like you would do a sprint product team stand-up, in terms of what are you working on, what did you do yesterday, what are you working on today, where do you need help? Do the same thing and install that system into your sales management platform, right? The second thing you want to do is like weekly. What are the weekly reviews? So whether those are pipeline reviews or assessments and reviews of recorded calls or demos, so that you can course correct and you can help that person that you've hired to continually learn. Because again, there's this tendency of, hired the salesperson, thank God. That's off my plate. And then you turn your attention to something else. Like, oh, let's go back to raising capital, or let's go back to recruiting from the product side, or let's go spend a bunch of time on the road and work with the current customers. Meanwhile, back in the office, it's day 3, and the salesperson is completely lost, befuddled, and not performing and not doing anything correctly that you need them to do. So having that weekly check-in with them. We used to do 30-minute walks with all of our team members when I was at Altos Research. So every single person, we did a 30-minute walk, and we did that to get out of the office, and it was designed to just talk about both work stuff, but also just life stuff. Like, hey, Jessica, what's going on? How are things with the new baby? How are things with your husband? How was the 10K that you ran last week? Like, just getting in some connection with that person on a weekly basis, see what's going on, right? Because it's not just work stuff that's affecting what their performance is going to be. It's life stuff. Derek Sivers, is a guy I have a lot of respect for and follow a lot of his stuff. And one of the things that he has said before is that everyone has a pebble in their shoe. Everyone has a pebble in their shoe. So whether that's something in work that's causing them an annoyance or something at home that's causing them an annoyance, like, you don't have to know everything that's going on in their person's life. It's not your job to dig and figure out everything that they're doing outside of work. But people often have stuff going on in their life. Whether their mom or dad is sick, or maybe on the good news, maybe their sister just found out that their sister's expecting their first baby. Like, let's go and find out what those things are so that we can support that person, right? And then finally, having some monthly and quarterly reviews that are designed to look at the metrics. Is the person that we've hired hitting the metrics that they need to hit in order to be successful at the company? And what that means is sometimes if they're not hitting their metrics early, oftentimes that's a training problem. We didn't train them properly. If they're not hitting that, and so if we come up with a way to remediate on that and to retrain, and the person's still not performing, then is there a way for us to go in and come up with a process improvement or a performance improvement plan? And then after the second month into the third month, if they're still not performing, well, let's take a really good look at, did we hire the right person? Are we managing that person to be successful, or did we just make did we make an unsuccessful hire? So that management piece is all about how are you promoting the people who are doing well over the long run? How are you making sure you're retaining the talent that you have? And how are you showing people a positive exit and maybe moving them into another position within your company? Maybe somebody got hired to do sales, but maybe they're better off at customer success. Maybe somebody who's doing really well in customer success wants to get into sales, so let's move them into something else. Or they're not doing well in one area, but they could be excellent performers in another. Or let's help them find a soft landing somewhere else at another company. So that's all part of the management process, is making sure that we're setting the team up that we've hired to be successful. So those are kind of the four pillars that we talk about. So it's define, find, hire, onboard. Then you've got these three within each of those to kind of complete your entire sales hiring system. And just like with your customers, when I talk with our clients and I teach them about the sales process, one of the key steps to every sales process is the implementation. So yes, they sign the contract, and yes, you've closed the sale, and yes, you maybe even gotten paid, but the implementation of your product might take weeks or months. I've been in a situation where the implementation of a new data product that we sold to Freddie Mac took 9 months. So even though they'd signed the contract and they paid us $250,000, we were still implementing 9 months later. So that's still part of the sale, because if we don't implement correctly in the sale, then we have a chance of either losing that customer, or they're just not going to renew when the renewal is due 3 months later at the end of that 1-year contract. So it's the same thing with your sales hiring. You want the managing piece is just like the implementation side of your customer success. You want to make sure that as you're bringing people aboard, it's not just, hey, congratulations, you're hired, go get them. It's having a complete system to implement. And that's why this onboarding is a key part of your sales hiring system. So let me just pause there. I've been going for a while. And let's see. Okay, checking the time. Wow, 11:40. So I've been going for a while. Any questions? If you're on the line right now, I still see we got a couple people that are still with us, which is awesome. Go ahead and refresh my screen here. If you want to learn more about this model, or you want to figure out, if you're watching this either live or you're watching the recording of this, if you want me to help you kind of assess your entire sales hiring system, because there's probably parts of your system, maybe things you're doing really well, and maybe there's things that you haven't thought about. So, for example, one of the places where I see that companies tend to do pretty well would be things like, hey, I'm an early stage company, I'm going to make sure that I'm hiring the right people. And so they might be really good at finding the right culture, the right cultural fit, and they might be really good at using their network, but one of the things they're not particularly good at, for example, is being really clear about the jobs and the metrics. Or on the hiring side, not doing a very good job of having a regimented system of screening, assessing, and interviewing, right? How are we offloading a lot of the work to the candidate as part of the screening process? How are we objectively reviewing the work that people have done in the past and how they're going to fit? And then how are we asking the right questions to know whether or not this is the right fit or not for them and for you? So in some cases you might be doing some things really well. In other cases you might have some weaknesses that need to be improved, some gaps. And so regardless of the case, if you want some help going through this, then what we can do is we can either hop on the phone, for example, or we can hop on a Zoom, and I'll ask you a couple questions about these 4 areas, and what we'll do is help you identify specifically where you've got some gaps and where you've got some opportunities to improve, and then give you some strategies that you can use to improve on this process if this is a growth area for you. So I think that's what we're gonna call it a day right now. Love that we had some people on. If there anything else I can help you out with, then that'd be great. Just as a quick reminder, again, this is the second day of Christmas, so this is the end of my, I guess you call it the ever live version of the second gift, because you can always come back and watch the recording. In the first day of Christmas yesterday, we announced that we're giving away copies of my first book, Startup Selling, How to Sell If You Really, Really Have to and Don't Know How. So if you want a copy of the book, just write the word Startup Selling in the comment box. Even if you're watching this 2 weeks from now, from when we record, it's totally fine. We're not stopping the gift giving just because you didn't respond on the first day of Christmas. We want as many people as possible to have this book. I had one of my clients, Rachel, email me today. She said she's halfway through it already, and she said it's awesome, which is great. If you go to Amazon, we've had a lot of really positive reviews, so I don't mind sort of patting myself on the back because we worked really hard on this book. And even better, I've got another book coming out in 2018. So we'll have another gift to give, I guess, next year. All right, so we're going to call it a day. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this, please like it, please share it, please tell a friend. We're doing these every Wednesday. This is session number 6. We're doing session number 7 next week, and I will see you then. Thanks so much. This is Scott St. Bucci, signing off.